The signal came through at 0347 hours, Galactic Standard Time. A desperate, broken transmission bleeding through the void like a dying animal's cry. Static-wrapped voices screaming in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing. Help us. Please. Anyone. The message reached 47 civilizations across the spiral arm. Advanced races with fleets numbering in the thousands, species who'd colonized entire sectors, empires that had stood for millennia. They all heard it. They all analyzed it. They all made the same calculation. Too far. Too dangerous. Not our problem. The transmission originated from the Keth system, a backwater cluster of mining worlds on the edge of civilized space. 3 planets, 2 billion souls, and a resource extraction operation that barely registered on galactic trade routes. When the Devourers came, when those nightmare ships emerged from dark space like metallic locusts, the Keth had maybe 6 hours before total extinction. Their final broadcast was 17 minutes of pure terror. Cities burning. Orbital stations cracking like eggshells. Children screaming as biomechanical horrors tore through residential districts. The audio cut to static. Then silence. The galaxy moved on. But someone was listening. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, beyond Neptune's frozen orbit, past the edge of mapped space, something stirred. A signal interceptor buried in a rogue asteroid locked onto the transmission. Data flowed through quantum channels to a facility that didn't officially exist. In a command center carved from solid rock, Admiral Sarah Kane stood before a holographic display, watching the Keth system's death throes with cold, calculating eyes. She was 53 years old, silver-haired, spine straight as a railgun barrel. Her uniform bore no insignia, no rank markers, nothing to identify her allegiance. But everyone in the room knew who she was. The Ghost Admiral. Commander of humanity's most classified military asset. The fleet that Earth pretended didn't exist. Analysis, she said, voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Commander Lu stepped forward, datapad in hand. 17 Devourer capital ships, confirmed. Standard harvest pattern. They'll strip the system clean in 72 hours, then move on. Intelligence suggests their next target will be the Centauri colonies. Kane's jaw tightened. Centauri was home to 12 million human civilians. Earth's first interstellar colony, officially protected by the Terran Defense Force. But the TDF was 3 weeks away at maximum burn. The Devourers would be gone long before help arrived. What's the Council's response? Kane asked. None. They've classified it as a peripheral incident. No intervention authorized. Lu's voice carried barely controlled disgust. They're calling it a natural disaster. Natural disaster. Kane almost smiled. The Galactic Council had perfected the art of looking the other way when inconvenient crises arose. They'd done it when the Outer Rim colonies fell to raiders. They'd done it when the plague ships swept through the refugee sectors. They'd do it again when the Devourers turned their attention to more populated systems. But Earth's hidden fleet didn't answer to the Council. Kane turned to the tactical display. 200 ships hung in the black, invisible to sensors, cloaked by technology that shouldn't exist. Stealth frigates, assault carriers, dreadnoughts built in secret shipyards, funded by black budgets, crewed by volunteers who'd sworn oaths that went beyond national loyalty. They called themselves the Shadow Fleet. Humanity's insurance policy against a hostile galaxy. Prep the fleet for immediate deployment, Kane ordered. Full stealth protocols. We have 57 hours to reach Keth before the harvest completes. The command center erupted into controlled chaos. Officers relayed orders. Ship captains received encrypted briefings. Weapons systems came online. In the depths of space, engines that had never appeared on any registry began to glow. Commander Torres, Kane's second-in-command, approached with concern etched on his weathered face. "Admiral, the Devourers aren't pirates or raiders. They're a Class 9 extinction threat. Our intelligence suggests they've consumed over 400 civilizations. Even with surprise on our side, we go anyway," Kane cut him off. "Because someone has to." Torres stared at her. "This isn't about Keth, is it?" Kane's eyes hardened. "This is about what happens next. Today it's a mining system no one cares about. Tomorrow it's Centauri. Next week it's Earth. The Council thinks they can manage the galaxy through committees and negotiations. They're about to learn what happens when wolves come for the sheep." The Shadow Fleet moved like ghosts through the void. 200 ships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering, slipped through subspace channels that official navies didn't know existed. They carried no transponders, broadcast no identification codes. To the galaxy's sensors, they were whispers of dark matter, anomalies in the cosmic background radiation. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the HSS Vindication, her flagship and the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Around her, the crew worked in tense silence. These weren't Academy graduates or political appointees. They were veterans of the Rim Wars, survivors of the Titan incident, soldiers who'd seen what happened when civilized rules met uncivilized enemies. "Time to target?" Kane asked. 41 hours, reported Navigation Officer Park. "We'll arrive during their primary harvest phase. They'll be distracted, vulnerable." Kane nodded. The Devourers were efficient predators, but efficiency bred predictability. They'd strip a system methodically, orbital infrastructure first, then population centers, finally the planetary cores themselves. They'd done it hundreds of times across dozens of systems. They'd never faced resistance. That was about to change. The tactical briefing took place in the Vindication's war room. Holographic displays showed the Keth system in brutal detail. 3 worlds, all bearing the scars of Devourer attention. Keth Prime's surface was already pockmarked with extraction sites. Keth Secondary's orbital stations were gone, their debris forming glittering rings around the planet. Keth Tertiary, the smallest world, was somehow still intact. "Survivors," reported Intelligence Chief Ramon. "We're picking up scattered signals from Keth Tertiary. Maybe 50,000 people in underground shelters. They won't last another day." Kane studied the display. 17 Devourer ships, each one a kilometer of twisted metal and organic growths. They moved with purpose, their harvest ships drifting between worlds like mechanical vultures. Beautiful, in their own terrible way. "Strike pattern Alpha," Kane ordered. "We hit them hard, hit them fast, and get those people out. No heroes, no last stands. We're ghosts, remember." Commander Torres stepped forward. "What about the other systems?" "Intelligence shows 3 more Devourer fleets moving through the sector. When they realize what happened here, they'll know someone fought back," Kane finished. "Good. Let them know fear for once." The attack began at 1347 hours, ship time. The Shadow Fleet emerged from subspace like predators materializing from a nightmare. No warnings, no demands for surrender. Just violence, sudden and overwhelming. The first salvo caught the Devourers completely unprepared. Stealth torpedoes punched through their hulls before their sensors even registered the attack. Particle beams lanced across space, cutting harvest ships in half. The Devourers' organic armor, evolved to resist energy weapons, proved useless against humanity's kinetic projectiles. Kane watched from the Vindication's bridge as her fleet tore into the enemy formation. No elegant maneuvers, no grand tactics. Just brutal, efficient destruction. "Target their command vessel," she ordered. Take out their coordination. The Vindication's main gun spoke with thunder that shook the ship's frame. Hypervelocity projectiles crossed space in seconds, each one carrying the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The Devourer command ship, a massive organism of metal and flesh, shuddered under the impacts. But it didn't die easily. The creature, for it was alive, in its own horrific way, began to change. Its hull rippled and flowed, adapting to the attack. Weapons ports opened like infected wounds, spitting streams of plasma toward the human fleet. Evasive maneuvers. Kane barked. All ships, scatter pattern Delta. The Shadow fleet dispersed like a school of fish, each ship moving independently, unpredictably. The Devourer's return fire mostly missed, their targeting systems confused by the humans' erratic movement patterns. But some shots found their mark. The frigate HSS Reaper took a direct hit amidships, its reactor containment failing in a flash of nuclear fire. The destroyer HSS Wraith lost its forward section to a plasma stream, its crew sealing bulkheads and fighting on with half a ship. Kane felt each loss like a physical blow. These weren't nameless statistics. She knew their captains, had trained with their crews. But she couldn't let emotion cloud her judgment. Not now. All batteries, focus fire on the command ship, she ordered. We end this. The combined firepower of the Shadow fleet converged on the Devourer flagship. Under that concentrated assault, even its adaptive defenses began to fail. Hull plates cracked and peeled away. Internal fluids leaked into space like alien blood. The command ship's death throes were spectacular. It convulsed like a dying whale, its internal structure collapsing as key systems failed. When the reactor finally breached, the explosion lit up the system like a newborn star. The remaining Devourer ships didn't retreat. They couldn't. Their collective intelligence was linked to the command vessel, and with its destruction, they became nothing more than sophisticated predators, dangerous but mindless. The Shadow fleet hunted them down one by one. When the last Devourer ship died, the Keth system fell silent except for the crackle of debris fields and the whispered prayers of survivors. Kane stood at her command station, watching the tactical display clear of hostile contacts. Around her, the crew worked to assess damage and casualties. Preliminary report, Torres said, approaching with a data pad. 11 ships lost, 37 damaged. Casualty estimates are still coming in, but we're looking at around 3,000 killed or wounded. Kane closed her eyes briefly. 3,000 lives. The price of playing guardian angel to a galaxy that didn't want their protection. What about the survivors on Keth Tertiary? Rescue operations are underway. We should have everyone evacuated within 6 hours. The question is where to take them. Their homeworld is a dead rock now. Kane made the decision without hesitation. Transport them to Kepler Station. The colony there can absorb 50,000 refugees. Admiral, Torres said carefully, that's going to expose us. Kepler Station will ask questions about who's dumping refugees on their doorstep. Let them ask, Kane replied. We'll be gone before they get answers. As the rescue operations continued, Kane retreated to her private quarters aboard the Vindication. The space was spartanly furnished, a desk, a bunk, a single viewport showing the stars. On the desk sat a photograph, faded with age, showing a younger version of herself in Terran Defense Force dress uniform. She'd been a different person then. Idealistic. Believing that the galaxy's problems could be solved through diplomacy and proper procedures. That belief had died during the Proxima incident, when she'd watched an entire human colony burn while the Galactic Council debated intervention protocols. That was when she'd accepted the offer to command Earth's Shadow fleet. To be the sword in the darkness, striking at threats the official military couldn't acknowledge. A soft chime announced a visitor. Kane looked up as Dr. Elena Vasquez entered, the fleet's chief medical officer and one of the few people who dared to challenge the Admiral's decisions. "The wounded are stable," Vasquez reported. "But we lost some good people today, Sarah. Captain Morrison from the Reaper. Commander Chen from the Wraith. They had families." Kane set down the photograph. "I know. Do you?" Vasquez stepped closer, her voice sharp with emotion. "Because sometimes I wonder if you remember that we're not just weapons to be aimed at the galaxy's problems. We're people. We chose to follow you out here, but that doesn't make us expendable." Kane met her friend's gaze. "Every person who joined this fleet knew the risks. We all made the same choice. To be the shield that guards the realms of men, even when those realms don't know we exist. That's not an answer, that's a recruiting slogan." Kane was quiet for a long moment. Outside the viewport, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles. "When I was 8 years old," she said finally, "my family lived on Kepler Station. Just a small agricultural colony, barely self-sufficient. One day, raiders hit us. Pirates looking for supplies and slaves." Vasquez sat down, recognizing the tone of a story Kane had never shared. "The colonial authority promised help. The council said they'd investigate. Meanwhile, the raiders spent 3 days doing whatever they wanted to our people. My parents died in the first attack. I hid in a grain silo for 72 hours, listening to my neighbors scream." Kane's voice remained steady, clinical, but Vasquez could see the pain buried beneath decades of discipline. On the 4th day, a single ship arrived. Not official military, just a freelance crew who'd picked up our distress call. They drove off the raiders, evacuated the survivors, asked for nothing in return. The captain told me something I've never forgotten: sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Kane looked directly at Vasquez. "That's why we're here, Elena. Because sometimes the right thing isn't legal, isn't authorized, isn't safe. But it's still right." The evacuation of Keth tertiary survivors took 18 hours. The Shadow Fleet's transport ships, disguised as civilian freighters, carried the refugees to safety while the warships maintained overwatch. It was a delicate operation, requiring precise timing and absolute secrecy. As the last transport departed, Kane received an encrypted message that made her blood run cold. The communication came through channels so classified that only 3 people in the galaxy were supposed to know they existed. "Admiral Kane," the message began, "this is Director Harrison, Earth Intelligence Division. Your recent actions in the Keth system have been noted. While your mission parameters allow for considerable autonomy, engaging a Class 9 extinction threat without authorization represents a significant escalation." Kane paused the playback. Harrison was a cold, calculating bureaucrat who treated human lives like accounting figures. He'd been instrumental in creating the Shadow Fleet, but that didn't make him trustworthy. The message continued: "Intelligence suggests the Devourers were scouting for larger prey. Their primary fleet is currently massing in the Void Nebula, preparing for a coordinated assault on multiple systems. Estimated target, the inner colonies, including Earth itself." Kane felt ice form in her stomach. If the Devourers were planning a large-scale assault, the official fleets wouldn't be enough. Earth's military was powerful but spread thin across dozens of systems. A coordinated Devourer attack could shatter humanity's defenses. Your orders are to return to base immediately for debriefing and reassignment. The Shadow Fleet is being recalled to defend the core systems. Harrison out. Kane deleted the message and called an immediate meeting of her senior staff. Within an hour, the Vindication's war room was filled with grim-faced officers, all of whom had served long enough to recognize the signs of an impossible decision. "The situation has changed," Kane began without preamble. "Intelligence suggests the Devourers are massing for a major offensive. Earth Command wants us to return to Sol System for defensive operations. Commander Torres frowned. What about the Outer Rim? If we pull back now, systems like Keth are defenseless. That's the calculation, Kane replied. Save the core worlds, sacrifice the periphery. It's sound military strategy. But not something you agree with, observed Chief Ramon. Kane was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical display. I've spent 30 years watching good people die because someone decided they weren't worth saving. I won't do it again. Torres leaned forward. Sarah, if Earth Command has recalled us, we can't just ignore the order. We're still part of the chain of command, even if we operate in the shadows. Are we? Kane challenged. When we took these oaths, we swore to defend humanity. Not Earth's government, not the colonial authority, not the Galactic Council. Humanity. That includes the people in the Outer Rim who are about to be fed to the Devourers. The room fell silent. Kane could see the conflict in her officers' faces. They were military professionals, trained to follow orders. But they were also human beings who'd witnessed the galaxy's indifference to suffering. I'm giving you all a choice, Kane said finally. Those who want to return to Earth are free to go. Take your ships, report to Sol System, follow orders. No one will think less of you. She paused, meeting each officer's gaze in turn. But I'm staying. The Shadow Fleet was created to do what others couldn't or wouldn't. Today, that means standing between the Devourers and innocent people who have nowhere else to turn. If that makes me a rogue, so be it. One by one, her officers nodded their agreement. Some reluctantly, others with fierce determination. But in the end, they all made the same choice. They would stay. They would fight. They would be the shield in the darkness, even if it meant defying their own government. The Void Nebula was a graveyard of stars, a region where dying suns had poisoned space with radiation and exotic matter. It was the perfect place for predators to gather, hidden from prying sensors by the nebula's interference patterns. The Shadow Fleet approached carefully, using passive sensors and probe drones to map the threat. What they found defied their worst fears. Not 17 Devourer ships, but hundreds. An armada of organic vessels that writhed and pulsed with malevolent life, preparing for the greatest harvest in their species' history. Mother of God, whispered Torres, staring at the sensor readings. There must be over 300 ships in there. Capital vessels, support craft, some kind of mobile shipyard. This isn't a raid, it's an invasion. Kane studied the display with professional detachment, her mind already calculating angles of attack and survival probabilities. The Shadow Fleet numbered less than 200 ships, and many were still damaged from the Keth engagement. In a straight fight, they'd be annihilated. Time until they complete their preparations, she asked. 18 hours, Ramon reported. After that, they'll disperse to hit multiple targets simultaneously. By our calculations, they can strike 12 systems within 72 hours. Kane nodded grimly. 12 systems. Hundreds of millions of lives. The inner colony's defenses were strong but scattered. They couldn't be everywhere at once. But the Shadow Fleet didn't need to be everywhere. They just needed to be in the right place at the right time. New plan, Kane announced. We don't fight the fleet. We fight the war. She activated the holographic display, highlighting a single massive vessel at the center of the Devourer formation. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, part ship, part creature, part mobile factory. Organic growths covered its hull like tumors, and energy readings suggested it was some kind of command nexus. That's their queen ship, Kane explained. If it's controlling the others like a hive mind, taking it out could cripple their entire operation. Torres shook his head. It's surrounded by 50 escort vessels. We'd never get close enough for a kill shot. Not with ships, Kane agreed. But we're not just bringing ships. She smiled for the first time in days, and her officers felt a chill that had nothing to do with the void's cold. We're bringing ghosts. The assault began at 0300 hours, fleet time. The Shadow Fleet's attack wasn't subtle or elegant. It was a howling storm of violence designed to draw attention and create chaos. Every ship opened fire simultaneously, filling space with kinetic projectiles and energy beams. The Devourer fleet responded as expected, their escort vessels moving to intercept the human attackers. It was exactly what Kane had hoped for. While the two fleets engaged in a brutal slugging match among the nebula's twisted gases, 3 stealth ships slipped through the chaos toward the Queen ship. Their hulls were coated with adaptive camouflage that made them nearly invisible to organic sensors. Inside, elite strike teams prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Kane had volunteered to lead the boarding action personally, despite Torres's violent objections. She couldn't ask her people to take risks she wouldn't share. More importantly, she needed to see the enemy's heart with her own eyes. The boarding pods launched from the stealth ships like bullets, their momentum carrying them through the Queen ship's defensive screens. They struck the organic hull with impacts that would have shattered conventional armor, but the Devourer vessel simply absorbed them, sealing the breach points with living tissue. Inside the pods, Kane and her strike teams waited for the cutting charges to burn through the alien material. The air was thick with tension and the smell of recycled atmosphere. These were volunteers all, men and women who'd accepted that they probably weren't coming home. The charges detonated, and the boarding teams poured into the Queen ship's interior. The inside of the vessel was a nightmare of organic architecture. Corridors that pulsed like arteries. Walls that seemed to breathe. Strange growths that tracked their movement with eyeless awareness. The strike teams moved quickly through the alien maze, following sensor readings toward what their instruments insisted was the command center. They met resistance, of course. Devourer drones emerged from hidden alcoves, creatures that might once have been soldiers from conquered worlds but were now something else entirely. The firefight was brief and brutal, human weapons tearing through organic armor in sprays of alien blood. Kane led the advance, her assault rifle chattering as she cleared the path forward. Behind her, Sergeant Major Wells called out targets and coordinated their movement. These weren't glory seekers or heroes from adventure stories. They were professionals doing a job that needed doing. The command center, when they finally reached it, defied human understanding. It was less a room than an organism, a pulsing mass of neural tissue surrounding a central core that blazed with bioluminescent energy. The Queen herself hung suspended in the center, a creature of impossible beauty and horror. She was ancient, Kane realized. Old beyond human comprehension, her consciousness vast and alien. When she spoke, it wasn't with words but with images that burned themselves into their minds. You are small things. Brief flames in the darkness. Why do you resist the harvest? Why do you deny the beauty of consumption? Kane stepped forward, her weapon trained on the creature's central mass. Because we choose to burn bright while we can. The Queen laughed, a sound like breaking glass and dying stars. Your resistance changes nothing. The harvest will continue. Your species will feed the void, as all others have, maybe, Kane admitted. But not today. She triggered the charges her team had placed throughout the command center. Not conventional explosives, but quantum disruptors designed to unravel the exotic matter that bound the Queen ship together. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, but its effects rippled through the Devourer fleet like a neural shock. Ship after ship went dark as their controlling intelligence died. The carefully coordinated armada became a collection of mindless predators, dangerous but no longer directed. Kane's strike team made it to their extraction point with seconds to spare, their stealth ship pulling them clear as the Queen ship began to collapse in on itself. Around them, the Devourer fleet was already dispersing, individual vessels fleeing into the nebula's depths without purpose or coordination. The immediate threat was over. But Kane knew it was only a temporary victory. The Devourers would regroup eventually, find new queens, resume their harvest. The galaxy would remain dangerous, and innocent people would continue to need protection. That was fine. The Shadow Fleet would be waiting. 3 days later, Admiral Sarah Kane stood in her quarters aboard the Vindication, reading casualty reports and damage assessments. The fleet had paid a heavy price for their victory, 47 ships lost, over 8,000 casualties. But they'd saved millions of lives and bought the galaxy precious time. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. Kane wasn't surprised to see Director Harrison's face appear on her screen, his expression coldly furious. "Admiral Kane," he began without preamble, "your deliberate disobedience of direct orders constitutes mutiny and treason. By engaging Devourer forces without authorization, you've potentially compromised Earth's security and violated 12 different treaties." Kane listened impassively. She'd expected this conversation. "You and your fleet are hereby ordered to surrender yourselves to Earth Command for court-martial. Any further resistance will be met with force." Kane leaned back in her chair. "I have a better idea, Director. The Shadow Fleet is going dark. We'll continue our mission of protecting human colonies and allied species, but we won't be reporting to Earth Command anymore." Harrison's face reddened. "You can't just declare independence. You're military officers, not pirates." "We're guardians," Kane corrected. "And sometimes that means making hard choices. Earth wants to play politics with the galaxy's safety. Fine. But we'll be out here doing what needs to be done." She reached for the communication controls. "Good luck explaining to the Colonial Authority why their black budget fleet just became a ghost story." The transmission ended, leaving Kane alone with her thoughts and the infinite stars outside her viewport. She knew what she'd just done. In the eyes of Earth's government, she was now a rogue, a criminal, a threat to be eliminated. She was also free. Free to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Free to fight battles that others wouldn't acknowledge. Free to be the sword in the darkness, striking at evil wherever it threatened innocent life. The Shadow Fleet had been created as Earth's secret weapon. Now it would become something more, humanity's conscience, operating beyond the reach of politics and bureaucracy. As the Vindication turned toward the unknown regions of space, Kane felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in years, she was exactly where she belonged. In the darkness between stars, hunting monsters. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with threats that civilized species preferred to ignore. But it was also filled with hope, protected by guardians who asked for nothing but the chance to serve. And in the deepest black of space, 200 ships sailed silently toward their next mission, carrying with them the dreams of those who still believed that someone, somewhere, was watching over them. The distress call had been answered. Not by governments or councils or official fleets, but by ghosts who chose to be more than shadows. It was enough. It had to be.